We're joined live from Frankfurt by Commerzbank's Joerg Kraemer. Mr. Kraemer, thank you very much for joining us. Did you expect such strong numbers out of Germany? Did you expect it to beat the estimates?
Well, I was somewhat above the Bloomberg consensus, yes, but I had not forecasted 2.2%, of course.
Now, a lot of this has been led by export. I suppose the question is, how long can it continue?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think this was a peak in growth in Germany, certainly. And we revised down our Q3 GDP forecast from 0.6 to 0.3, not only because there should be a correction after the strong second quarter. We also learn from the US, from China, that mostly the indicators now point south. And insofar, and this should have, of course, negative implications for the export-led German economy. That means, nevertheless, we revised up our forecast for 2010 as a whole from 2.5 to 3.25. But this 3.25 implies a significant slowdown in the second half of the year due to the problems in the US and in China.
Now, of course, a lot of those great export stories are about China. BMW, Daimler doing very, very well there. How concerned are you for Europe as a whole about what appears to be a slight slowdown in China?
It depends on the view you have on China. In my reading, in China, you have a slowdown, and this slowdown is more or less intended by the government, and it was caused by somewhat less buoyant public lending by banks to Chinese enterprises. But I'm quite confident that this will be an orderly slowdown in growth, but not a big problem. Therefore, it's the same as for the US. I think it's normal after 12 months or so that you see some moderation in the purchasing manager index, in the ISM in the US. This mid-cycle slowdown is normal when firms have more or less refilled their inventories. And yes, growth will slow down. Yes, this will also negatively affect the Eurozone and Germany, but this does not mean the end of the upswing. Especially in the States, you have to understand, we have a huge increase in corporate profits. It's already caused huge increases in capital expenditure. And we know from the past that this also has positive implications for the labor market. Therefore, slowdown, yes, but certainly not a double dip.
Right. Now, let's look at the peripheral countries in the Eurozone. How concerned are you about their health? We haven't really seen the austerity measures really biting yet, have we?
Well, I would say the austerity measures bite. We at Commerzbank calculate a so-called consolidation monitor, a public spending consolidation monitor. And for example, when it comes to Greece, Greece more or less already lowered its budget deficit in the first 7 months of the year, and it already more or less fulfilled what they promised for the year as a whole. That means they are more than 100% on track as far as the promised decline in deficit is concerned. And this more or less is also true for the average of the peripheral countries. And therefore, I think they are very well on track in bringing down the deficits.
Now, what do you think from today's figures? Does it change the way ECB will think about when they will increase rates?
Well, at the margin, of course, but I think the big picture is not changed, because you should not make the mistake and take Germany for the Eurozone as a whole. Yeah? The Eurozone as a whole, we only raised our forecast for the Eurozone as a whole from 1.2 to 1.5%. But 1.5% GDP growth for the Eurozone is still below trend growth in the Eurozone. That means the economic pain goes up in the Eurozone. Unemployment should continue to go up. This is one factor. The other factor why I don't think that the ECB will hike anytime soon, is inflation. In most of the countries, we have high unemployment rate. We have a downward pressure on wage growth, and core inflation is only at 1%, and core inflation will stay there or may even go down further. That means growth is not strong in the Eurozone as a whole. Economic pain goes up. Inflation is not a problem. I don't think that the ECB will raise significantly before the end of next year. And this is currently our forecast for the first ECB rate hike.
Joerg Kraemer, thank you very much indeed.